Hey kid, an old voice whispered over to me. Looking into the alley, I saw the tall figure of an old man who could have been anywhere from 85 to 100. He looked old, let's just say that. His boots were weathered, his beard was thick and gray, and his hair looked tousled and unwashed. He was still handsome somehow though, and he gave off sort of a Kurt Russell in 30 years sort of vibe. For a moment, I snapped out of the worst day of my life as I looked over to him. Rough day? The old man asked. That was an understatement. My girlfriend Zoe had broken up with me in the morning. I had gotten into a car accident in the afternoon, and my boss had fired me for being late in the evening. Maybe the roughest day of my life. Yeah, you could say that. He smiled warmly. How about you buy me a cup of coffee? I was confused for a moment. Excuse me? A cup of coffee. Everybody can use some help from time to time. I thought of the day that I had been having. Zoe seemed to think that I wasn't good enough for her, and my boss didn't believe me that I actually got into a car accident. I wish that someone had given me some help today. Sure, why not? The two of us walked over quietly to the cafe at the other end of the street and we entered together. I ordered coffee for both of us and we sat down at the corner table. How's your drink? I asked. The old man grinned, taking a sip. You know, I didn't really want coffee. I looked over at him curiously as he continued. I could tell the kind of day you were having and I just wanted to help you out some. It looked like you could use it. Normally, I wouldn't have been so blunt in what I said next, but I was the worst version of myself today and I just blurted out what I was thinking. No disrespect, but it looks like you can't even help yourself. I regretted my directness immediately. Look man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. No, I appreciate your honesty, he replied. It's refreshing. I'll tell you what, young man. You have been so kind to me, buying me coffee and everything, that I'm going to do you a favor. His eyes stared into mine. I'll give you 1 free day. No charge. A free day of what? I asked him. A free day of help. If you're interested in more, I'll be here tomorrow until midnight. The old man stood up and smiled one last time, and he walked back outside until he disappeared in the distance. What a strange day. The next morning, I awoke to the buzzing of my phone. I answered to a woman's voice. Hello, is this Nick? Yeah, hi Nick, I replied. Hi Nick, we received your application for the job and we'd like to know when you could start. I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm sorry, what job is this? I'm calling from Keen Steakhouse. Would you be able to come in to talk more this morning? I thought for a moment, and then I remembered I had put an application in as a waiter there almost a year ago. Yes, absolutely, I'll be there, I said, hanging up the phone. When I arrived at the restaurant 2 hours later, I was greeted by the manager and I was brought into her office for an interview. It went better than great too, and she hired me on the spot. And there was one more thing. As I was filling out the paperwork, there was a young woman seated next to me that turned out to be her daughter. She, no exaggeration, was the most beautiful woman that I had ever seen. Not only that, we became instant friends as well. A Bruce Springsteen song happened to come on the radio, and we both started humming it at almost the exact same time. Looking over at each other, we laughed immediately, and we went on to discuss our mutual love of Bruce Springsteen for the next hour. I even got her number too. What a day. Back at home in the evening, I realized that I had literally gone from the worst day of my life to the best. And then suddenly, I remembered the old man in the cafe. This day all had to be just some strange coincidence. But still, he had seemed nice enough. Maybe I should go buy him another cup of coffee. He might be a bit off, but he at least lifted my spirits when nobody else had. Walking back into the coffee shop at around 8, I saw him in the corner and I ordered us both a drink. He smiled and waved me over. "So, how'd your day go, kid?" "It's funny you asked that. I got a new job and I actually met this girl." I couldn't help but smile and he smiled back. "It was maybe the best day of my life," I said wholeheartedly. I couldn't help but laugh a little. Today had been amazing. "What are you, some kind of good luck charm?" I joked. "You could say that," he replied. "But nothing comes without a price." The old man reached out his hand towards me expectantly. "How would you like all of your days to be just like this one?" Without thinking, I smiled and I shook his hand back. "That would be great," I replied. I wished him well and then I headed out of the coffee shop. I hadn't gone more than 50 feet when my phone buzzed again. The text was from a mutual friend who said that Zoe had gotten into a car accident earlier today. She was in critical condition. I'm not sure why, but I turned around and I walked back towards the window. Looking through the glass into the cafe, I saw that the place was empty and the old man was gone. Please, don't make the same mistake that I did. After I heard about Zoe's accident and her current condition, I went to the hospital. She had left me, yes, but that didn't mean that she deserved this. I hope that she wasn't there because of me. After finding out what floor she was on, the mental elevator doors opened to the sound of her mother openly weeping. I think I knew right away what had happened, as I made my way down the long hallway towards the noise. I saw a large group of her family members gathered. Her father held her mother close, and a state of complete shock hung over the group. Zoe had died shortly after the accident, and I never got a chance to say goodbye or find out what had happened. Driving back home, I wondered if maybe it was just a coincidence. I avoided her funeral, not because I didn't want to be there, but because her parents had never liked me and I knew they wouldn't want to see me. They were the ones that told her that I wasn't ambitious enough, that I wasn't going anywhere. Time went on. A year later, Rachel and I started dating, and we eventually married. She seemed happy. The following year, I was promoted to general manager of the restaurant, and a few years later, I opened my own. With each subsequent day, I would expect the old man to show up at my door and ask for payment, but he never did. I never saw the old man again, but I never forgot about our deal. It was almost 10 years to the day since I had seen that old man in the alley, when I saw Rachel pacing back and forth in the kitchen of her home. She looked nervous. "Nick, we have to talk." "What about?" She hesitated. "I know about you and the young woman at work." I didn't expect that, but it didn't matter. You do, huh? My wife just stared blankly as I continued. It doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, it's not like you ever loved me anyway. No woman ever noticed me until... She began to cry as she interrupted. Until what, Nick? Until you met the old man? Are you really going to bring him up right now? After what you did? I stared back at her. My ex said that I wasn't good enough for her, and... I'm not Zoe, don't you get it? I just wanted you to love me. She shouted back. There was a minute of dead silence. I don't believe you, Rachel, I replied coldly. Well, it doesn't matter what you believe, Nick. Believe that I was sent from the devil. Believe whatever the hell you want. I'm leaving you. My wife waited for my response. I shrugged. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. I always knew you would. I watched her passively as she packed her things, looking up at me sadly, and then she left. My life went on, and a few months later, I opened up my 4th restaurant without any issue. I even started dating a new waitress. I should have been happy, but I wasn't. I found that I could no longer sleep at night. At first, I went from 7 or 8 hours a night to just 5. And then, as the weeks went on, I couldn't sleep for more than 4. I hardly sleep at all anymore. I've tried Ambien, I've tried drinking, I've tried both. But I can never stop my thoughts from racing long enough to actually rest. Thoughts rush through my mind about the past, about Rachel, about that old man in the alley. This morning, I got up and I walked over to the mirror, and I stared at my reflection. I looked like a zombie. There were deep lines in my forehead, and for the first time, I noticed a scowl on my face. Did I always look so scary? Picking up my cell phone, I called my associate James and told him that I wasn't going to be in for a while. I just didn't want to be at the restaurant right now. It reminded me of Rachel, and I didn't want to think about her. But I could not stop thinking, and a week later, I was no better off. In fact, I was far worse. Barely sleeping, I had lost my appetite and I was rapidly losing weight. And then one night, as I sat on my veranda, staring out into the Pacific Ocean, a thought suddenly came to me. It chilled me to the bone. What if that old homeless man had just been an old man? What if I had done this all to myself? I looked around at the empty house, a mansion on the beach. Fitting. I felt like I had built my whole life on a foundation of shifting sand. Maybe Rachel would love me after all. I had worked 60 hours a week and saved up every penny to open up my own restaurant. Yet it hadn't made me happy because it felt like it was all just given to me. I always felt like I hadn't earned it and I didn't deserve it. Guilt overwhelmed me and I had to get the hell out of there. I grabbed the keys to my car and I drove. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't need to know. I just needed to be anywhere except here. 2 hours later, I passed a sign for Daly Springs, the town where I grew up. Getting off the interstate, I found the alleyway where the old man had called to me years earlier. I walked the sidewalk and I saw the abandoned building where we had coffee, where I shook his hand. Getting back in my car, I found an old flower shop off the main street, and I purchased a dozen white roses. I drove to the cemetery, parked my car, and I pushed open the tall metal gate. I walked down the long rows of graves, and as the sun started to set behind the trees, I saw it. Zoe Williams. I knelt down quietly and I set the roses down softly on her grave.